So I guess I should start by telling you a little about myself and then try to give you a brief history of time travel. I suppose you know all the basics already. Time travel is real and it's all around us and always has been throughout all of human history. But no one's ever known about it because the one rule of time travel is you can't change the past. But I guess we should go back to where it all started, which is in 1988 when Stephen Hawking wrote A Brief History of Time, and he asked if time travel is possible, where are the tourists from the future? It would be difficult to believe that some visitor from the future wouldn't spill the beans. Of course, this belief is totally understandable because up until the birth of time travel, virtually all depictions of time travel involved beans being spilled, so to speak. According to the laws of science fiction, it was basically impossible to go back in time without changing the past. But in 2009, Hawking decided to put this age-old question to the test with an experiment where he threw a party for time travelers but didn't send out the invitations until after the party. He sat there a long time and no one showed up, so Hawking declared that time travel must be impossible. In 2010, I was a millennial college student and aspiring comedian, writer, artist, whatever the fuck, and I heard about this experiment and wrote a stand-up bit about it, where I basically joked that the only thing Hawking's experiment proved is what a fucking narcissist he is for declaring time travel impossible just because no one showed up to his little party. And I joked about how maybe the time travelers did come back to Hawking's party, but they just got drunk across the street and laughed at him through his window for being such a dumbass. I tried the bit at a handful of open mics, and it always bombed, and then eventually someone accused me of being ableist for the joke, so I stopped doing it. So over the next decade, I struggled to get noticed while working shitty jobs and barely making ends meet, and slowly realizing that none of my dreams would come true, while also getting totally disillusioned with the world around me. I was an idealist who dreamed of a better world, and I felt stuck in a system that was full of paradoxes and nothing made sense and made me feel completely powerless and really fucking sad. So in 2020, a few weeks into the coronavirus crisis, quarantining, I killed myself. And look, it wasn't some woe is me, they'll miss me when I'm gone, I'm such a tragic figure type of suicide. No, it was more like I was really fucking bored and sad. But on the day that I killed myself, I got a knock at my door. And it was this beautiful young girl, and she told me she was a big fan of mine, and also a time traveler. And she wanted to talk to me before I ended my life. And I thought this was crazy and must be a prank or something, but I didn't really have anything to lose, so I said, fuck it, yeah, sure, let's talk, and I invited her in. So she sat me down and she told me that, time travel is real, and it had actually already been discovered in Stockholm, Sweden, but it hadn't been made public yet. But when it did, it would be the biggest paradigm shift in human history. Bigger than the invention of the atom bomb, the COVID-19 crisis, and it would set off the biggest existential and geopolitical crisis in human history, where all the global superpowers were scrambling to build the first time machine while also insanely paranoid that their enemies were plotting against them to use time travel to destroy them. And it was chaos, and humanity got really close to completely destroying itself. But then a young tech entrepreneur named James Dawes came along with a bold vision for time travel that was inspired by Shakespeare's famous words, all the world's a stage and the men and women merely players, entrances, exits, blah blah blah. And Dawes argued that basically the past was like a giant play, and it needed to stay exactly on script and every mark needed to be hit, or else the whole fucking theater would come crashing down. So the only way to make time travel work would be if mankind could set aside their narcissistic instincts to be players on the world stage, and instead to step out of the subjective spotlight and retreat into the background as extras or set dressing in history. And if we could do this, we could get a front row seat to basically any moment in history and enjoy the fucking show. But see, this vision would never work with the outdated games of the old world, like capitalistic competition or nationalistic battles for power. See, there's only one past, so we all have to work together to preserve it. But if we can set aside our differences and unite as a global community, we could work together to map and model every last detail of the past and then create a system to make sure that nothing ever changes. James Dores called this vision Panachron, and it wasn't a corporation or an NGO or anything we'd ever seen before in history. It would be a nationless, classless, global cooperative where we all work together to harness the full potential of humanity and work towards the common goal of mastering time. Now, nobody else had any better idea of what to do with time travel, and James Dores also dosed the UN with LSD when he first pitched this idea, which I think helped everyone, get behind it and start getting along. So that was that. The world decided to become Panachron and get to work. So using Panachron's new time machines and disguises to blend into the past and AR contact lenses to safely navigate it, and all of the technology we had developed under surveillance capitalism, we started discreetly going back in time to document every detail of the past and create this sort of chronological blockchain, I guess, while also installing a hidden network of time machines throughout all of space and time. So once the course had been secured, Panachron launched recreational time travel. You could catch a game at the Coliseum or watch the world premiere of Romeo and Juliet. You could get wasted with the Vikings or boo the Beatles in Hamburg. You could binge watch the Holocaust or drop acid at Woodstock. You could watch some French Revolution beheadings or grab some sushi in Shogun-era Japan. Initially, Panachron started out with just the major historical events, but it quickly and exponentially grew from there until virtually all of space and time was there for you to freely visit. You could even go check out the insignificant stuff from the past, like your own past or just everyday random people, which I guess gets me to how I ended up in the present. So this time traveler in my apartment tells me that I guess someone had stumbled upon my Stephen Hawking joke at some shitty open mic and they loved it, because I guess I was right. People did go back in time to Hawking's party, but not to meet him. Actually, Panachron built a dive bar across the street from Hawking's home, so time travelers could go back and get drunk and watch Hawking through his window as he sat there waiting for time travelers to show up. It sounds like a joke, but there just so happened to be a vacant apartment across the street, and Panachron's gotten really good at discreetly building and removing short-term pop-up time machines. And eventually, my Hawking joke became a big hit amongst time travelers, and literally millions of them came back to shitty open mics to watch me do it. And I had no fucking clue, because I guess they couldn't laugh, because that would change the past, because my joke always bombed. And I became famous, I guess. People started to consider me a genius who was born ahead of his time, but was never appreciated before his death. And I became widely considered the voice of my generation or something. So I was like, cool, great to hear, but if this is all true and you're really a time traveler, then why are you telling me this all right now? You said you can't change the past, so why would you come back in time to talk me out of killing myself or whatever? And she was like, no, I'm not here to do that. That would be impossible. You have to kill yourself like you always did. But Panachron and James Dores have come up with another innovative solution. You see, the present is built on top of a past that's full of tragedy and catastrophe and tons of fucked up shit. But Panachron can't do anything about it because that would fuck up the course and destroy the present. But James Dores and Panachron had come up with a brilliant solution for this called Helping Hands. You see, Panachron can't undo any tragedies from history, but what they could do is go back and simulate some of them and then save the victims and bring them to the future for a second chance at life, and so they could contribute their skills to society. And since I was a significant figure from history with a voice of my generation or whatever, I'd been selected for Helping Hands, and they could fake my suicide, Epstein style, and bring me to the present to share my voice. She told me that if I accept this invitation, then we'd go directly to the present, and Panachron would handle my suicide, and I'd start a new life in the present, with unlimited access to the past and freedom to explore it any way I want. And all that Panachron asks of me is that I share my voice and be a social commentator or talk about what it's like to be a refugee from the past coming to the present. But if I rejected this offer, she said that the anti-paradox security system would kick in and this moment would never happen, we'd never have this conversation, and I would kill myself like I always did in the past, unaware of time travel and my fame in the future. Now, I still thought this was all crazy and part of some elaborate prank or whatever, but, I said fuck it, whatever, sure, take me to your little time machine. And she did. It was tucked away in the back of a liquor store just by my apartment that I'd been in a million times before. And we walked into this time machine and sat down and revved up and I time traveled to the present. When I arrived, I was basically knocked out because it was my first time tripping and the time lag hit me super hard, but I slowly came to and they started processing me into the present. And they also told me about how the present was like this liberal utopia where everyone was free to be whoever they wanted to be. You could change genders or even change races or get plastic surgery to make yourself look any way you wanted without anyone ever judging you. I said I was cool on all that for now, but they did strongly suggest that I change my name because they said it would help me get a fresh start and kind of let go of all my trauma from the past. I couldn't come up with anything because I was so fucked up, but they suggested the name The Pilgrim, based on Billy Pilgrim from Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse 5, who gets unstuck in time. I said, sure, whatever, fine, I'll be the Pilgrim, sounds good, and that was that. Now I'm here, in this bingeable new world, where literally anything in history is available for me to explore. I've definitely started out a lot slower than most people are used to tripping, with me being a newbie and the time lag still hitting me pretty hard, but I've seen a lot of shit. A lot of amazing shit, and lots of horrific shit. But what can I say? It's been spectacular. It's been entertaining as fuck. Luckily, I'm not the only fish out of water here. I've met a fellow pilgrim from the past named Savi, who's also from my era, but she grew up in Mumbai, India. And in 2019, she went on a Tinder date, but the dude told her he wasn't actually interested in her. He was actually a time traveler who was here to save her from getting raped and murdered on her way home from the shitty Tinder date she was actually supposed to go on. He told her about Panacron and how in the present people are pretty addicted to time travel, so unfortunately birth rates have plummeted because present women are just having too much fun time traveling and don't really want to make the sacrifice of being pregnant for 9 months. So Panacron needs women from the past who died while they were still able to have children to come get a second chance at life in the present in exchange for bringing new life into it. And if Savi agreed to have at least 2.5 children before her biological clock runs out, she could avoid her brutal rape and murder and come live in the time-traveling utopia of 2088 and become the mother that she was never able to be. Savi took this deal, as I assume most women would in the face of being raped and murdered. But yeah, now she's here and starting fresh in the present like I am. And we kind of got set up here, though we haven't really fallen for each other or anything. Of course, she's gorgeous and cool and amazing and all that, but I guess it's just been kind of hard to kindle some romance given the circumstances. But yeah, we become friends and it's nice to have a peer, so, we both don't feel so alone in the present. And then, of course, there's the faceless. When I got selected for Helping Hands, I thought that maybe I was unique, and maybe I was one of the first people in the program. But as it turns out, Panacron's actually been importing quite a lot of people from the past for quite some time. You see, there's a lot of unskilled labor that needs to be done in the present, and most people are overqualified or simply don't want to do it. So Panacron realized that they could decrease suffering in the past while increasing productivity in the present by starting to save people from some of history's biggest tragedies. Like slaves who died on sunken slave ships, or the Japanese people who got atom bombed, Native Americans who were genocided, people who died in famines or plagues. And yeah, now there's basically a shitload of people from the past who are now living in the present and doing all of the dirty work. They call them migrants, which for some reason they don't call me that. I still don't really fully get that, but I guess it's because I'm more modernized and I can adapt to the present more and be trusted to time travel, but a lot of the migrants are more primitive and they can't really be trusted with the same clearance level to visit the past. I don't know, I'm new here, and I guess, that's the way it is. And a lot of smart people have figured it out, and apparently there's a small portion of migrants who aren't so happy with their new lives in the present and don't really like the deal they got from Panacron anymore, so they've started an anonymous terrorist group called the Faceless, who is set on taking down Panacron and undoing time travel and changing the past. Which is of course impossible because Panacron has the course so perfectly preserved, but nevertheless they do their fourth dimensional jihad attacks, I guess just to make a statement and, do it for the spectacle of it. Now of course it's only a very small percent of migrants who are involved with the Faceless. Most migrants are great people and really cool. One of my closest friends is actually a migrant, my buddy Webby. Webby came to the present as a super young kid after he died at an African diamond mine back in the late 1960s. And he's been an amazing friend to me ever since we started hanging out. He imports the most amazing prehistoric weed from the past, so I've been kicking it with him and his migrant buddies just to unwind and shoot the shit. But it's always felt pretty fucked up how Webby's been living in the present way longer than me and working so much harder, but he's still not allowed to time travel the way I am, simply because he's a migrant. So if that were me, I could totally see how I might become sucked up into the Faceless, just out of sheer frustration and hopelessness. But look, Webby's definitely not part of the Faceless, and I'm not trying to suggest that he's sympathetic to them at all or anything like that. I've also met some presenters who don't exactly seem to be the most responsible time travelers, like James Doerr's son Simon, who I got connected with and I've been hanging out with. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say too much about him, but I just don't see how it's cool to be having sex with countless women in the past without causing a paradox. I don't know, apparently it's fine and completely paradox-free, but it's a bit weird to me. But yeah, I got connected with Simon through his dad because apparently he's a fellow creative and thinker, and James Doers thought we would get along and maybe Simon could show me around a bit. He's definitely more of an avid tripper than me, so it's kind of hard for me to keep up with him. And every time we do trip together, he basically just wants to chase past pussy. Simon's not really in the present so much, so we don't hang out here that much, but when we do, it's kind of hard because he's quite convinced that he's a very important and significant historical figure in the future. So every time we're in the present, he's constantly looking around and telling me about how everyone around us is future time travelers who have come back to watch his amazing life. So it's a bit hard to have a conversation with him or get to know him because he's just constantly distracted by his future admirers that are always around us, apparently. So that's interesting. I've also been spending some time with Simon's longtime girlfriend, Nadia Etheridge, who's definitely easier to get along with and is a lot more sympathetic to my adjustment from the past to the present. I think it's because Nadia sees herself as some sort of social justice warrior who takes pity on the poor little boy from the past. So while Simon's off doing his own thing, Nadia's been showing me around and taking me on some of her favorite trips, like the Civil Rights Movement, Gandhi's Salt March, Occupy Wall Street, the 2020 American protests, and she seems pretty proud of herself for how she chooses to spend her time, which I don't really understand since the past can't be changed, so we're not really helping anyone when we just stand around in these historical struggles. But she's got a good heart and she's really sweet, though I think she's kind of sad about how little attention Simon pays to her. But Nadia seems to believe Simon when he says that he's the most significant person in the present and that he's busy doing very important work, and I guess that's why she sticks with him, even though he spends barely any time with her. In a way, I admire Simon, though, that he can have that sort of confidence, because, they tell me that I'm supposed to do this and, share my voice and my thoughts and everything, that people care about it and it contributes to the present or whatever, but every time I do this, I can't help but feel fucking stupid, why would anyone ever come back to hear what I have to say when you have all the shit in human history you could be doing instead? Does anyone from the future come back to the present at all? Is there a future at all for people to come back from? I don't know, but it's kind of hard for me to believe there is when no one can give me a sign. Fuck it. Maybe I'm not supposed to do this, but anyone there? Someone give me a sign, a little tap on the glass. Just let me know that any of this matters. This is the Pilgrim, page in the future. Do you exist? Do you give a shit? No? Nothing? Cool.
Pump this, pump this, pump this, pump this. So you should pump this shit like they do in the future. So you should pump this shit like they do in the future. So you should pump this shit like they do in the future. So you should pump this shit. Pump this